harmonizing with nature. With over 4 decades of changing lives, your self-discovery archaeologist, get ready to be the best of you with your host, Beverly Zymet.
And welcome to the Beverly Zymet Show, where being the best you can be has just gotten easier. My guest today is Cynthia Martin, and she's calling in from the Panhandle of Florida. Is that right?
That's right, Pensacola.
Pensacola. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Beverly. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to speak with you today.
Yeah, we're going to have fun. This show is always fun. So tell us a little bit about your background, what you do, what got you into what you're doing, and, just really share that passion with our audience out there.
Okay, I live in, as you've stated already, in Pensacola, Florida, but my story begins in a very small town, for those of you who know, is in Michigan, in a little town right in the middle of the Mitt. Only Michiganders understand the Mitt because we're the only state that can point it out with a Mitt. I found myself, and I'm going to go ahead and spill the beans. I was 38 years old. That was a while ago. And I found myself at a place that I had to make a choice in myself. I had decided that I either needed to make some changes or I was going to commit suicide. And I came to the end of myself. And I didn't know what truth was. I felt like I'd been lied to most of my life. I'd been taken advantage of. I was really beaten down. Didn't even know who I was. I remember thinking, I don't know who I am. Whoever I am isn't right because I can't make anything work. And so that began the journey when I made the decision that I had 4 children. I still have those 4 children. But at the time I had 4 children and they were at home. And I decided that if I committed suicide, that would be more destructive for them than me not. And I struggled with that, to wonder if that would even be true, if me staying or going would be better or best for them. And so I made that choice, and it took me on a path of probably, I don't know, maybe, I don't even know, I've not even really thought about it, probably 2 or 3 years of really self-discovery and doing a lot of work on myself, making a lot of changes, but also recognizing a lot of the lies that I believed, some lies that I had based my life on. And I made a commitment at that time to, it took me a long time because I did live in that very small town and there wasn't the type of resources that we have available now. And there were not anyone around me that could help me. When I would tell them some of the things I were feeling, they would say, well, that's not true. But that didn't help me because that's what I felt, that's what I believed at the core of who I was. So I made the decision, and I feel like, I went through a lot of those things so that I can relate to people who are in the same position that I was in. And so my life mission is to help people really connect with who they are. And there's actually 3 things, which we've talked about this already. I'm a Christian minister, and I believe that it's important that we know who our God is, however you frame him. Of course, I have my own idea of who that would be. Then who we are and who our enemy is. And so those 3 messages are what I frame a lot of, 90% of what I do is on those messages, helping people get in touch with those 3 perimeters, I guess I could say. You might ask, and I don't want to take over here, but you ask a preacher to talk and they will talk. It will happen. But, I'm a bit different than most, you'll find out, because I believe that all of us have value. I appreciate people who believe differently than I do. I have no problems talking to, and I invite talking to people who believe differently than I do, because if I don't believe that I can stand for what I believe in, then do I really believe it? Right. So I'm attracted to people that think differently than I do. I believe we all have value. I always use the analogy of a snowflake. Every snowflake was made differently. If you look at them, they're all beautiful and they have a unique design. I believe each person has their own voice, and we need each other's voice in order to get a full picture of truth. So that's who I am. I help people who are trapped, lost, people who are bitter, people who are angry, people who feel like they've gone in circles. Maybe they think they have a problem, but they don't know what it is.
Right.
They can't make relationships work. Nothing seems to work out. They seem to keep catching themselves in the same place. You know the song, if you're around me very long, you're going to hear me sing it. She'll be coming round the mountain.
Oh, I love that song.
She'll be
I
coming
love
round
that
the mountain when
song.
she
Yeah.
comes. She'll
Yeah.
be driving 6 white horses.
She'll be driving 6 white horses.
That's right. Well, how did you know that
Right.
she would be driving 6 white horses? Because she's been that way before. And I help people get out of the patterns that they keep traveling around. Maybe a new date, a new name, but it's still the same pattern.
Right.
So that's what I do.
Cynthia, oh my gosh, I tell you, I'm not kidding you. I'm sitting here listening to her, right? And I'm like, who's she talking about? She talking about me? She talking about her, right? Because I'm not kidding you. Let me tell you a little of my story, because you don't know my story either. So for the audience out here, when people come onto the show here, it's 100% organic. Nothing's been pre-planned. She doesn't know anything about me other than what she's watched on the show, right? And I don't know nothing about her. And this is why it's so beautiful on how things flow. But my journey started back in 1974, and it wasn't in the little glove thing that you were talking about in Michigan, but I was in the little glove thing in Iowa, okay? On a farm, second oldest of 11. I had 3 kids under the age of 5, and I took a walk one night, and I was checking out. I was right there on the edge of suicide. I was going to be gone, right? And before I left, I decided I was just going to give what I thought God my peace of mind, right? I grew up in a very strict Catholic, community and everything, parochial school, 12 years, the whole thing, right? And so that night when I'm out walking down the gravel road and I start my releasing, because I was so full of anger. I was a rebel from day one, and that anger started coming out to the point of I almost exhausted myself from yelling and screaming and kicking and throwing rocks and you name it, and just reached that point when I finally just surrendered. And I heard this voice. I mean, it was intuitive all my life. And like you said, back then, there's none of this stuff that was here today, right? And so who do you talk to? And then when you do say something, they look at you like, you're crazy. That ain't the way it happened. You know what? My truth is my truth, and my interpretation is my interpretation. And we all have that. So when you're working with people, it's meeting them where their truth is. Because if you don't meet it where the truth is, there's nothing you can change. Absolutely nothing. And the person themselves needs to start to recognize that as well, that this is their truth, right? And so when I heard the voice say, are you done? I said, yes. That was my surrender. And then the voice goes, well, who's going to take care of your kids when you're gone? Like, oh, crap. Well, back in the 70s, which obviously you remember, there was this show called Let's Make a Deal. So I says to this voice, fine, then let's make a deal, because obviously I got to hang around for a long time because we're all under the age of 5, right? And it's like, I want out of this dead-end marriage. I want out of Iowa. I want this, because I had these dreams, and I was definitely not living my dream, right? And I said, so there, what do you say to that? And the voice just says, okay. I was like, what? It's just that easy, right? And I was like, well, I have no clue how to do this, right? And then I hear the words mind over matter. It's like, mind over matter? What the heck is that, right? And then it says, start living your life for you and your kids. Oh, piece of cake, because I was starting to do that already. And one thing led to another. So the voice that I was listening to, eventually I found out, because I moved from Iowa to Denver, got my divorce, everything, life changed. I mean, I got everything that I had on that list very fast, but I knew I had to get my act together first, just like you, right? It's like I had no identity. That was the key. So that's what I work on now, is I'm an identity revelation specialist, right? I've become a self-discovered archaeologist. So what I do is I help people become their own self-discovery archaeologists, right? And get into what is that? Who really are you? Because if you don't know who you are, how are you going to find your purpose? So it's returning that identity back, and most people don't know this about me, but I am an ordained minister, right? And I don't put it out there in the format that you do because it just wasn't there. But I do, I'm a holistic practitioner. And, so a lot of the work that I do, the intuitive work that I do is hands-on, so it was a legal status at the same time. But, I've had people, review their, renew their vows and things like that I, associate, overseen and whatever, so it's there, But again, I think it goes back into, like you said, that personal belief and to be able to stay open to all of it. So the similarities in your life and in my life are like, that's what I'm saying. Now you understand why I'm saying, who's she talking about? Right?
And, I think there's a lot of people that are out there that have the same, maybe be walking in those places right now,
Right.
but they don't know who to turn to.
Right.
The books don't help. I mean, you might get it, but there's just sometimes just a little bit deeper than what a book can help. Sometimes you can do a lot in self-discovery, but I had to go through probably 3 or 4, maybe 5 people before I could get all of the keys together,
Right.
and so, but I think there are people out there that just need some help. I love, one of the things I smiled at, Beverly, when I found you is your archeology. I love that.
Okay. Yeah.
Self-discovery archaeology, because that's what we do. I always say, as you can see, I have Kleenex in the background, and of course, I have my Bible, which is my truth. Is that I work with a box of Kleenex and a Bible, and I'm not
Right.
happy because I drill until I can get to the bottom, because until we can change the roots, we're certainly not going to change our fruit, because an apple tree is not going to make an orange, and an orange is not going to make an apple.
Exactly. Right.
And so, what that root may be different, but the process of getting to our roots for me is always the same. And sometimes we have to dig around a little because we have so much covered over it.
Right.
That's protected that pain, and has protected those beliefs that some of us may even, and myself included, formed before I was even born.
Exactly.
I had formed
Right.
beliefs about my own identity that was not based in truth. And so, if you believe from the time you're born that something's wrong with you, it doesn't matter what you do, because that's always going to come out, and you're not
Right.
ever going to be able to succeed and be the full person that you are until your life is built on something that's secure.
Right. And it is it's that old programming, right? It takes 30 days to create a habit, which becomes your personality trait as you keep going, because you hear it over and over and over. It runs on autopilot. And so to make that shift and getting into, like you say, the root, because it has to come from the root. If all you do is cut the top off, that root gets stronger and stronger. Right. And stronger. So you're making this little molehill into this mountain. And all thought is magnetic as well. So when you discuss it, or if you read a book, or if you're watching a movie and all these things are happening, you're adding that feeling to the emotion. So it's the feeling that fuels the emotion. And then everything gets distorted because your brain has to go through the critical part of the brain where it cuts and pastes to move things into different files. Then when you bring stuff up, 95% of that stuff that's stored belongs to someone else, not you. Are you ever going to get to the needle in the haystack? Probably not. But if you can recognize there's an issue and you're willing to just pull the root out no matter what it's attached to, over the years, I've developed a little technique called the rah-rah system, which is, first off, you got to recognize that there's a problem, right? It doesn't matter what that problem is. You recognize there's an issue, and then you need to acknowledge it. So you acknowledge that issue because, like you said, it was, it's built on truth with the database of information you have at the time that it's created. It may not be your truth today, but back then, it's the only thing that you knew. It's the only information of database that you had to build on. It became your truth. Now, as you mature and you get other information and database, you're looking at these things, it's like, I don't believe that stuff. So you try to cut it off instead of deleting it. You can't, because you're in that inner conflict with all that cell memory. So acknowledging the subconscious, acknowledging it, that's your truth. It's like, okay, surrender it, It's say, okay, subconscious, I get it. Yes, it's our truth. But
Yeah.
guess what? Things have changed, and that's when I go into the surrender. So it's like you're talking to that inner child, right? And when you recognize and acknowledge that as being the truth, it's like the conflict stops because the little kid's not saying it's mine, 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 and it's almost like it's like this candy bar that you gave them when you were 5 years old, right? And now it's theirs, and it's not going to go anywhere, you know. And now you're 45. So you've had it for 40 years and you're going to just like give it up? Oh, hell no. Right? So when you say, okay, this was our truth, this was our candy bar, you know, it was really good back then. But guess what? I had this new candy bar. Look at this. This is so cool, right? It's bigger, it's better. And then the subconscious, because it's like, as a child, it's like, you know what? Let's get rid of this old candy bar. Let's take this new candy bar because it's going to be so much better. That's how you begin to remove the energy that is fueling that old truth, that old database, so that you can eliminate it. Replace it then with that new database of information, and that becomes your automatic pilot. And then you embrace that and accept it as your total truth. This is the shifting, and I think this is where a lot of people that I have found, because they've said, oh, I've used all that stuff, I tried to do this and I've done that and I did this and I did that, and it's like, let's give it a shot. Let's just do it this way. So
exactly. Yeah. And one of the things, so much there to unpack, but I use the terminology, and I always like to say first and foremost, and I forgive me for not saying it, when I talk to someone who believes a bit differently than I do, I want to acknowledge that we may use different words,
right,
and that the way we frame things may be a bit different. And so I always try to make the agreement that we will attempt not to be offended by each other's words, because sometimes words are just semantics and they can be tore apart. And we may say something that's offensive to someone else, and really we're just trying to explain something. And I'm also a big question asker, so I'm not challenging people when I ask questions. I'm looking for clarification.
Right.
But one of the things that you said is about the candy bar. And one of the words that I use is that we form agreements with something. Mm-hmm. And when we realize that agreement is not based in truth, we need to break agreement with that, what I call as a lie. We need to break agreement with that lie and establish in ourselves a truth that we can build on or that will grow. One of the things that you said is the reason why we protect those is a lot of times those lies or those beliefs that we have, that little, you're old enough that you remember the tape recorder that rewinds and replays in our mind when we hear something, and it says, no, that's not true, or that can't be for you, nobody knows that, you know, you're really different, that doesn't work for you, or whatever it is that it's telling you. It's based in pain, and pain surrounds that, and people protect pain. You know, I got a little thing here because I hurt something on the end of my finger, and so we protect that because when it gets bumped, it hurts, and so we protect those areas because they're painful, and then just more pain over the years keeps coming and creates this big painful mass that we think we can put aside, and we'll build walls around it. And then what happens is, as we grow older and we built so many walls around it, we find out we do that to protect ourselves. But what happens is we find out is we're trapped on the inside of this wall, and we can't get out and touch with other human beings anymore. Right. Somehow pain can still get in, but we can't get out anymore. And so I agree that we do need to, you know, you change the analogy, change this candy bar for this candy bar. Right. You know, this one's better. I agree. I see that. In my case, though, I would also say that we need to make sure that we resolve the pain that's around this candy bar, so that we can take
exactly. Oh yeah, you know, and sometimes to recognize, to get exactly to what that is, it because it's so far removed, you know. And again, it goes back into that trusting, right? Now you really need to trust, you know, who you are. You need to trust the situation. You need to trust the solution, and just surrender to it. And sometimes a lot of people fear surrender. Oh my gosh, that means I'm weak, I'm giving up. But it doesn't.
No, surrender is great strength.
Surrender, when there's no more battles, there is no war, right? So when you stop that inner battle, There's no war. And that's when you really start to come to life, right? So again, the play on words, and I love, that you said that, because I'm a stickler for words as well, because one word can change the meaning of everything, because our, different cultures, different areas of where we grew up, that word can mean something completely different. And you don't know that until you run into that situation, and when you see the response from someone, and their reaction, you're like, whoa, okay, what word did I use that triggered that kind of response, right? And so it's like, okay, now we need to get to the root of what the word was and how you interpret it, because it can be like a knife. It can be that different. And communication, so open lines of communication. It's misunderstanding because of usually just one word. And if we are honest with each other and are able to just be that expression of something that impacts us, when someone says something to us that's offensive, that we interpret as being offensive, we need to just say, halt. I heard you just say, and you repeat that. This is my interpretation. Was this the message you were trying to give me? And I can almost guarantee you 1 out of 100 is going to say, yeah, so what do you got to say about that? The rest are going to be in shock, what? Oh my God, no, not at all. Because again, it's that one word that did the trick, right?
That's true, and I agree. I think what happens, though, is that people are so wounded and so afraid, and they don't know their identity, nor do they have the strength to challenge something. They always take it against themselves, or they just back up and just figure, well, this isn't for me. For me to have said something to someone, is that what you meant? Would have been exposing myself, and I would not for anything be vulnerable before anyone, because to me vulnerable equals weakness, of which it doesn't, but I didn't know that then. A very strong, hard person I was before.
Gosh,
I had work. I mean,
you're just so like me. It's crazy.
I could just run over you and chew you up and spit you out in a moment, and no problem.
Yeah, never look back, right?
And never look back. That's right. Yeah. How many dead bodies are behind me? I don't know. I'm just going forward. But I wasn't happy in that. I really wasn't. I didn't like the way that I was seen by other people. I knew on the inside that's who I was. I wasn't who what I was on the outside wasn't the same as who I was on the inside, but I didn't know how to get the two to match. One of the things I want to mention is that, I talk a lot about going back to the beginning of what you've built your life on, because that's important to me.
Well, it's where it all began, right? Yeah.
And so one of the beliefs, or I would say my core belief, and that's, question me if you're not quite sure what I mean by a core belief.
Oh, I believe. I know what that is.
One of my core beliefs is that I picked up before I was born, is that I was a bother. And so, as you go through life, you pick up when anything negative happens, you just assume, oh, it's because of me, because I'm a bother. And so it just keeps building upon and building upon and building upon and building upon. And every experience that's negative re-supports that belief. See, it's true. It's true.
Yep.
When your marriage falls apart, it's true. It has to be true, because you've been this father your whole life. And because of what I believe, my calling on my life, what God created me for, the message that he has given to me, to help humanity, to help mankind, to connect people to who he is himself, and who they are themselves, and who the enemy is. Because of that, if I believe that lie, I would never be able to be who I was called to be.
Exactly.
It totally negated what I was called to be, without anything else. There didn't have to be anything else. And so once in my language, the enemy of my soul doesn't want me to embrace who I am, because then I can help other people become who they are to be.
Right.
And so trying to stay away from religious language here. But so when I realized that my truth is that I'm not a bother, I'm a blessing.
Exactly.
And so coming to speak with you, I'm not bothering you. I'm not bothering your audience, who probably is way different than the normal audience that I speak with. I'm not bothering them. I'm bringing them a blessing. I'm bringing them a message of hope, of healing, of identity, of purpose. And so I think that's really important. Like you said, we have to get to the place where we identity, your archaeology, your
Exactly.
self revelatory, and is that when we can dig down and find out what the basis of our life is on, then we can build something beautiful.
Exactly.
That's one thing that God is uh, really good at, is taking messes, because we're all a mess, and making something beautiful out of it. And what the interesting thing is he's not going to make something different, because he made us beautiful in who we were and who we are. He's going to just uncover who we are and make us whole.
Well,
So
and
I
that's
think
kind
that's
of,
really interesting.
it is, and then that's kind of part of the whole idea of being here on the planet. He gave us free will to make
Yep.
choices. So he's not going to tell you you're doing something right or wrong, because there is no right or wrong. There's your is. What's your is, right? So what's right for me may not be right for you. So does that make it wrong? No. It makes it my right and you're wrong. That's all.
Well, yeah, and I hear what you're saying, and this is one of those places where we differ, because I do believe there is a right and a wrong, but I'm okay with that you don't believe that there's a right and a wrong, because I can't make you do anything, nor do I want to, because we do have a free will. You have to
Right.
choose for yourself. Like I would tell my daughters when they were growing up, and I do have 4 fabulous daughters, grown up to be awesome women, but is that I would say, this is what I believe, and this is why I believe it. But I can't make you believe anything. You have to make a choice for yourself.
Right.
And so you have to choose what is right for you. But this is what I believe, and this is how I believe it, and this is what it is based on. Now, this is the fruit of what I'm doing will bring out of what I'm doing. So you have to choose for yourself, because your life will bring fruit as well. What is it that you want your life to bring?
Right.
And so, that's why I willingly and look for people who think differently than I do, not to try to convert you, but to also say there's another message.
Right.
A lot of the message we're going to join, but there's some of it that we're going to be totally opposite, but that's okay with me. And I assume, because you've had me on, that you're okay with it as well.
I'm okay with it. Well, that's kind of what this show was all built on. The theme of this show is being that best you that you can be. And that comes in many, many different forms. That is as unique as every one of us are out there. You use the analogy of a snowflake, right? And that's what we are. We're all a snowflake. And we're all biting for time. Here's the planet. The world is our playground, right? And there's so much adventure out there. It's what are you going to do? But the biggest adventure is the one inside of here. So check out the world inside of here. And that's your identity. So we move back into that identity. And you talked about vulnerable. Oh my gosh, I'll tell you this little story about vulnerable. And I was right where you were. It was like, you make the waves before the wave gets you, right? And I was in this, I was out here in Denver now, and people I was being introduced to were helping me to understand the intuition and stuff that I had and whatever. So we're in this class, in a little self-development type class, like in 1982. And I'm sitting here with a good friend of mine. It's still a great friend of mine. And so we're looking in each other's eyes, because there was 3 of us that were kind of putting this program together. And Jim, who was the instructor, he says, okay, as you're looking into the soul of each other, right, and you're making yourself free and trustworthy and whatever, allow yourself to become vulnerable, right? Boom! This big old wall would crash down in front of us,
It ain't happening.
And then so, because what you had to say was, okay, I allow myself to become vulnerable, right? So here I go. I allow myself to be I could not get that word. I couldn't even say the word. And this went on for several classes and stuff, right? And then Jim goes, okay, so this is the last time we're going to do this class. We're going to move on to something different, whatever, blah, 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 and turn it into something bigger and better. So here I am with Bill and I doing the same thing, looking at each other, right? And it's time to say, and so I've got my eyes on him, and we're just dropping all the, negativity and just really trust. And I started to say, I allow myself to become vulnerable. And the word actually just flowed out. There was no barrier dropped. And after the class, Bill was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this was like it was a huge aha moment." So we all have those aha moments. So when you said that word, it's like, "Oh my gosh." But again, that's part of that identity. It's part of that barrier that we build up, that we have to, you have the fight flight mechanism that, hey, nobody's going to walk over me. Nobody's going to tear me down. Nobody's going to tell me what to do, right? And you become your own worst enemy. So when you can understand that you're not your enemy, you're your friend, and you start working jointly with that and start discovering that real you and being that self-discovery archaeologist, you just kind of start sweeping away a little bit of the dust, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And when you become the real you, when you start discovering the real you, you begin to see the beauty and the trust and the belief, and where you can go, because there's so much to life out there. Because if you're not living, you're dying. I talk a lot about the world of duality because we live in the world of duality. You have two sides of the fence. We have negative, positive. To me, negative is not a bad thing. Positive is not the good thing. It's the charge. What are you charging the words? We talk about words. What are you charging that word with? Because it's that flow. It's what you put behind it that charges your feeling. So when you get angry, what's the feeling that you attach to that anger? Is it hate? Is it frustration? Is it confusion? Whatever it is, you're charging it, And so the words that are charged with negative energy are those that are a slower vibration. When you start working in the fields of energy for the words that are higher vibration, you got happiness and love and joy, and fun. So there are two sides of the fence, is that increase of vibration. So negative energy is not a bad thing, because you can take that fear and you can make that fear your driving force to the good of something. Because if your desire to have the good, the desire to have an outcome of a dream is greater than the fear of not having it at all, that fear is going to continue to drive you to the outcome that you're looking for. And it clears the path. The further and the closer you get to it, the less fear there is, because fear of the unknown is going to bite you in the butt if you let it, right?
Yeah. I always say that people won't change because the fear of the unknown is huge.
Oh, it's huge.
But until people won't change until the fear of wherever they are or the circumstances of where they are is greater than their fear of the unknown. Exactly. And a lot of times that brings us to a place of breaking, where it did with me. I got to the place that I didn't care what the truth was. I just needed it. Right. If it was true, all the things that I believed about me, then I at least needed to recognize that this is truth, and then I could fix it. Or if it wasn't truth, I needed to find out what truth was so I could make my life based on it. And so, I agree. We differ a little bit about the positive and the negative. I too agree that there is a light and a darkness. I also believe that there's a source greater than ourselves. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of common ground. We have some differences as well. But one of the things that you had said a while ago is that, talking about vulnerability, is that in order for me to be vulnerable, I actually had to find a person that I could trust. And there was a lot of tests that I had to go through in my own mind to believe whether this person was trustworthy. And unfortunately, a lot of people share their vulnerable self with people who are not trustworthy, right. And they become even more wounded. And so, whether that's me or you or someone else, I always encourage someone to find someone that they can connect with, whoever that be, and so that someone who is safe. And there are some perimeters for you to be or someone to be a safe person for someone else. And
Right.
part of that is allowing them to be who they are, where they are, to help them to get where they want to go, but that there's no condemnation, another religious word, but there's no judgment. I guess that's probably not as religious, but
Well, you have that judgment, that fear of judgment, right? People, we're all afraid if somebody's going to judge us. And we also have that fear of rejection.
right, exactly.
Right.
So being vulnerable, though, I realized I used to say that when I surrendered, same word you used, when I finally surrendered myself, I found myself. I found my strength in my
Exactly.
surrender. And so that's hard to explain to someone who's walled in and encased and
Right.
fearful and in pain, but it's true. But you can do that through. And I had to start with journaling because I couldn't talk to people. And it took me a while from journaling to get to where I could actually share with people. I could write on paper that I couldn't say to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was a paper that no one was going to see, that I just wrote what came out. I didn't try and filter it. And I saw things that I couldn't even admit to myself when I wrote on the paper.
Right.
And so, whatever tool people use to get started, I just encourage them to do that. So
Yeah, exactly. Because you got to
because
start somewhere. You have
you
to
have
start.
to start somewhere. Right?
Exactly.
And you have to determine what your truth is, and you have to determine what you're going to build your life on, and who is it that who you are. And so, I didn't know who I was. I thought I was a bother, but not only I've come into the place of not only embracing who I am, but I've also came into the place of being able to celebrate who I am.
Great.
So there is a place where we can discover, like you said, with your little brush,
Right.
wiping away that sometimes we have to take a pick and an axe to get through some
Well,
hard
sometimes
stuff.
you need a stick of
And then-
dynamite too.
Right. And then sometimes we need to take this little brush, and at different stages we need different things.
Right.
But there becomes a place where we should be, that we need to be led into, where we can find who we are, and then not only find it but also celebrate it.
Exactly.
We are.
Yeah. And when I talk with people too, it's like, you know what? When we start this work, I'll guarantee it's not going to taste good. It's not going to feel good. It's not going to smell good. It's not going to sound good. But you know what? It's all worth it in the end, because we don't need to dwell on it. All we need to do is recognize that this is no longer who you are. This is an association. This is an old belief. And people run, it's like, okay, I'm just going to leave this where I'm at, and I'm just going to go as far away as I can, start life over, right? And then all of a sudden they're there and they're starting to do things, and they turn around and they're still there,
They went around the mountain again. Exactly.
You can't run away.
Same place, new date.
That's right. You can't run away from yourself. And when you begin to realize that we are creatures of habit. End of story. Creatures of habit. And those old programs are going to run. So it's really recognizing what that old program is, and whatever modality it is that you use to regurgitate that old thing and say, you know what? This isn't who I am. This is not the me, the real me. And I need to move it out of the way so that I can become that real me. And there's so many different avenues that you can take to do that. Is one better than the other? No. The one that works for you is the one you need to use. And so don't just stop at one or another. Cynthia and I, we didn't just stop and say, okay, well, that didn't work. We just kept on going. She just shared with you, she talked to 4 or 5 different people to find out how to find yourself. Coaches need coaches, right? People need people, end of story, right? And to find someone that you can trust your deepest, darkest secrets with. And you know what? It's sad that it takes a total stranger to be able to do that with. And again, it's part of that not being rejected. And so what? If this total stranger rejects me, who cares? But, but to be able to say it with your closest friend or a family member or something, because the closer you are to someone, a lot of times they've experienced your experiences. I mean, I have 10 siblings, okay, and I'm second oldest. I'll sit there and I'll listen to some of these stories that happened when we were kids, and I'm thinking, are you sure we're from the same family? Are you sure we were on the same farm? Are you sure we were out there in the field at the same time? Because how they stored it, it was no recall for me at all, right? So we all interpret every action, every activity that we do. We interpret it as a meaning to us, and that's what's stored. So it doesn't matter whatever that story is, whatever that truth that's coming out, you've got to meet it as this is my truth. When I created it, this was my truth, and now it's not. And please, I got to get rid of it because I want this because this is my truth. And it's that belief system and really beginning to believe in yourself and trust yourself. Those are keys. You talked about, 3 things that you felt were key. I've got my belief things too that I believe that are really key to get into that awareness and to discover that real you. And that's being able to trust yourself, believe in yourself, and have the confidence and the courage to go out and walk the talk, right? Because that's what it's all about. That's the true testimonial when you can become that you. I share a little story with a lot of people, and I'll share it here again. Is we a lot of times become what we think others want us to be, to do what? To be accepted so we don't have to fear rejection. So now you go to work. Well, now we don't go to work, but you're around that work environment and the people there. You become that identity. We talk about identity. You become that you at work, right? Then when you leave, you go home. You're not that same you at home because you're in this home environment, whether you're married, if you got kids, or if you've got a spouse, or maybe it's just you and your dog or whatever. You're that you. Now you go to a family reunion, you're together with all your relatives and everything, and you're that you. And then you go on vacation to a place that nobody knows you. Wow, now you can just be whatever, right? Because nobody knows you. Nobody has relevance to who you are. So you can just be anything you want to be because that's what they're going to see you as. So you've got all these different yous. All of a sudden, one day, somebody sends you this little invitation, and you open it up, and you're reading it, right? And it says, you're invited to a party. Come on down. This is just to be an expression of you. We want to celebrate you. Oh, yay, right? So you go, you knock on the door, and someone opens the door. You step in. Now you see the people around each one of these personalities there, all together in that room. People from work, people from vacation, people from family, people from your home life, whatever the case may be. They're all in that room. Who are you going to be? Who are you going to be? All of a sudden, it's like, I haven't been feeling very good over the last few days. I don't want to contaminate me. I got to go. All right? Because you're not being true to yourself. You're not being the real you. So when you start to step back and you start to discover the real you, it's time to start looking at not only what your detriments are, but what are your assets? What do you want your assets to be? And you begin building on that. The more you can build on that, you're going to discover that the things that you're not, the detriments, right, are going to start to dissolve in their own self. So it's being that you and being that best you that you can be every single day. How are you going to become a better you, right? So Cynthia, this has been such a pleasure talking with you and sharing same ideas and wow. When you really start to understand people, you're going to find that you're really not that different than anybody else. But you're unique. You're unique. Not different, just unique, right? So what would you like to leave our audience with?
Well, I would like to leave the audience with the encouragement, I guess, a word to take the risk and to find someone, whether that be someone that you find online that you can follow at a distance, whether that be someone who is in your own location that you can reach out and touch, but someone that you can discover, that you can begin to show who you are and begin to explore who you are. One of the things that Beverly said very early on is that she wanted to living her dream. And I just want to encourage you, at that time when I fell apart, and even many years into my healing process, someone said to me that God was going to give me my dreams. And that was such an encouraging word, you would think, but I went home and wept and wept and wept because I didn't know what my dreams were. And so at whatever broken place that you're in, that there's hope for you. There's not only hope for you, whatever the lie in your mind that's telling you that it's not you, not you, not you, that's not the truth, that's a lie, and that there is hope for you, and that you are a celebrated person, that you have an identity, you have a purpose,
Right.
you have a voice, you have a message and gifts to share with humanity itself. And so I encourage you to reach out and to find someone that you can relate to get rid of all of those negative things and build your life again and discover what your dreams are, or be able to embrace the dreams that you have.
Right. Beautiful message. That's beautiful. And it is that, to really become whole within yourself. Another thing I share with a lot of my clients is, you know what? Lie to the world. Just lie to the world. But stop lying to yourself. Right? It says it doesn't matter what other people think of you. It matters what you think of you. Right? And when you can incorporate that, the world changes, because change is going to happen. Whether you go with it or not. It's going to go. It's going to go. Right? And so, gosh, we could just keep on talking and talking and talking. We'll have to get you back on the show.
I'd love that.
And, kind of carry this conversation on again, because it's so beautiful. So any of you out there listening, if you can relate to what Cynthia was saying or what I was saying, because there's so much the same, comment below. Reach out. We are here for you. We are here for you. We have developed through the years these 2 ears to listen, right? And sometimes that's all you need, is someone to listen. Everybody's free to give advice. Man, you start talking, they don't even know what you're going to say, and they're telling you what to do, right? Find someone who will really listen, and not just listen, but hear what you're saying coming from the heart. So comment below, reach out to either one of us, and we will get back with you, right?
That's right.
Right? So
Absolutely.
You're not alone in the world. So it's time to say, go out there, be that best you that you can be. Cynthia and I are going to go out there, be the best we that we can be, and we'll see you all on the next show. Thanks for joining us.